and welcome to our Healthcare Administrative Fellowship webinar panel. We are thrilled to have you with us today. My name is Benson Kumenda, and I'll be your host for this session. Before we dive into our discussion, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the organizations behind today's event. The American College for Healthcare Executives Southeast Texas chapter, also known as ACHE-SETC, and the Houston chapter of the National Association of Healthcare Services Executives, also known as N.A.H.S.E. ACHE-SETC is a professional society of healthcare executives who are committed to improving health and healthcare delivery through education, networking, and the advancement of healthcare management excellence. ACHE-SETC plays a pivotal role in shaping the future of healthcare leadership in our region. ACHE-SETC has several upcoming and exciting events of interest, all of which you can register for at www.ache-setc.org. Register now for the second annual Summer SOAR Networking Extravaganza on Thursday, July 25th at Hungry's in Rice Village. Learn about the importance of coaching at our upcoming Coaching for Success event on Wednesday, July 17th. Registration is now open for our fourth annual mini conference on Thursday, August 22nd at Texas Women's University. Attend here and attend here a keynote address and 2 panels and earn up to 6 ACHE in-person credits. Save the date for our third quarter breakfast meeting scheduled for Thursday, September 5th at the Weston Medical Center. And save the date for our annual Healthcare Leadership Conference, which will be November 7th and 8th of this year at the Intercontinental Houston Medical Center. So put that on your calendars. Early bird registration will be opening soon. And for the next organization behind today's event, N.A.H.S.E Houston chapter, which is dedicated to promoting the advancement and development of Black healthcare leaders and elevating the quality of healthcare services rendered to minority and underserved communities. Our mission is to promote the advancement and development of Black healthcare leaders and to elevate the quality in healthcare services rendered to minority and underserved communities. We have several events coming soon, including our Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt Certification online course on Saturday, July 17th, with Leaning Towards Change, LLC. The NAHSE Houston chapter annual leadership conference is back and better than ever. Mark your calendars and join us on September 13th to the 14th for 2 days of inspiring learning, networking, and growth as we explore the theme, Leading with Purpose in Healthcare. Also, save the date for NAHSE's 39th Annual Education Conference and 29th Everett V. Fox Student Case Competition that will be at Fort Lauderdale Marriott Harbor Beach Resort and Spa on October 9th through the 11th of this year. Our conference theme is Advance, Develop, Elevate, Empowering Communities, Catalyzing Change for Health and Wellness Innovation. Join industry leaders, professionals, and students in a dynamic event focused on healthcare administration, leadership, and diversity. Gain insights, network, and explore cutting-edge strategies to drive positive change in healthcare. If you'd like to learn more about our organization, our programs, or how to get involved, please visit our website at www.nahsehouston.org and connect with us on social media. All right, so now getting into our discussion. For the first question, this is a question targeted at all the panelists that we have with us today. And it's a question of, when you look back to whenever you were applying for your fellowships, how important was securing an administrative fellowship opportunity when you were beginning your career and now growing into your career as healthcare administrators?
I can start. So hi, everyone. My name is Mark Bonacorso. I am the current fellow for UTMB Health in Galveston. Securing a fellowship was really important to me. The benefits of being able to continuously learn, the ability to immerse myself in the culture of an organization, they were some of the biggest factors that I considered. I also I wasn't completely sure what field I wanted to go into, whether that be finance, operations, strategy, quality, or innovation, where I wanted to start my career in. So I feel like a fellowship was a great way for me to kind of dive into that and see where I saw myself fit. Securing a fellowship was also a great way for me to not only begin my journey in healthcare, but as an opportunity to catapult my career by giving me a diverse skill set going forward and creating a solid foundation for future growth and development.
I can go ahead and take the next one. So, hi everyone, my name is Deja Hawkins, and I'm the immediate past fellow of Morrow Herman Health System. I actually just finished up about a week and a half ago. So we have a couple new fellows in there, but I'm still relatively close to the fellowship still. So for me, my journey was a little bit different. So I am a recent graduate of the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I was in their MSHA program, but it was a requirement to do a fellowship in order to get my degree. So going into the program, I kind of knew that that was something that I was already having to explore just due to that requirement of having to graduate. So for me, it was more so just finding somewhere that aligned with my goals, my interests, because I knew, like, I have to do it for my program. So I might as well be somewhere that, has everything that I'm looking for. They used to tell us, like, make sure you find a fellowship where you can, establish some roots. It's somewhere that you want to live. It's somewhere that you feel like you can grow, you can build. So that was something that was really important to me, just finding somewhere where I knew I could establish some roots there, but also grow within the organization while also seeing a system-wide view. Just similar to Mark, I really didn't know where or just like the exact area that I would want to be in, but I knew that I wanted to see a system approach or just go at it from a system approach. So just getting past the requirement portion, just in understanding the benefit of the fellowship and allowing me to kind of have that head start into a career post-fellowship was something that I kind of had to shift my mindset towards. So I made sure to say, hey, what aligns with my goals? What do I see myself in 5 years? And what city is that in? What, is that a leadership position? So just kind of putting that at the forefront and prioritizing those things for me.
All right, I'll go ahead and follow up with that. So my name is Brendan Brown, and I'm a current administrative fellow at Houston Methodist. And I actually came a long way from home. So I'm from Florida. I went to the University of Central Florida. And so similar to what Deja was saying about just really finding an organization that you align with, but also being in a city that you can see yourself, planting some roots in and really staying at. I knew I didn't want to be in Florida much longer. And so Texas was really appealing to me. But of course, the medical center here was. I knew that if I wanted to start my career in healthcare, there was no other area that I wanted to come to. And so really finding those former fellows who I would reach out to, who were very genuine and sharing their experiences with me, I just knew for a fact that this was an organization that I really wanted to be a part of. And so it was extremely important to me, similar to what both Mark and Deja have said, about really making sure that I had an opportunity to continue to be a lifelong learner. I really wanted to make sure that although I finished the academic portion of that school career, I still had that opportunity to continue to learn, to continue to grow, and to actually apply some of those things from the classroom into some real world scenarios. And so I figured, there's no other option than to pursue an administrative fellowship. And so I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. And next year will be approaching, or next week rather, will be approaching 1 year of the fellowship. And so it's been a really great experience.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Nzou. I'm the immediate past fellow at Baylor College of Medicine. And pursuing the fellowship was important to me because, as everyone, my fellow panelists have said, I graduated last year with my master's in health administration from UNT Health Science Center. And I had my, the internship, and it was like a very segmented view. And I was kind of like, I still don't really know what I want to do. I only have this internship experience, but it was a very small area. I was actually working in DEI, so it wasn't anything clinical. So I was like, okay, I would like to expand my view, kind of be able to see more things in the healthcare system. And so I was looking around this Texas Medical Center. It's huge, so many institutions there. And then within Baylor, being in an academic medical center where I can see clinical things, research, education, have that full view of everything. And get to do that in 1 year, get to do that at a great institution in a great environment as well, in an environment where throughout it's all about learning. It's an academic health center where everyone's learning. The administrative fellowship program in particular is about learning, about growing people who just came out of school. So that seemed like a great opportunity for me, still get to get paid, get to learn, get to be in a great city with different things, definitely different from Fort Worth in the best way for myself. So it was all around a good decision for myself.
I agree. Houston is vastly different than Fort Worth, but Mark, I remember whenever we spoke earlier in the week, you mentioned that you had just actually started your fellowship this past week. So whenever can you kind of describe to us about the research process? What resources were particularly useful in researching like a potential program?
Absolutely. So yeah, so as Benson said, I just started my fellowship. This is actually was my fourth day. And as they say, you kind of just jump in head first. It's been fantastic. It's been a great opportunity so far. But in terms of your question, the fellowship research process began for me before. I know a lot of y'all are in your internships right now or practicums. It started before my internship even started. I had a spreadsheet kind of outlined with all of the organizations I was interested in pursuing. And what I plan to apply to and what requirements each of them had, whether that be letters of recommendation, personal statements, all the deadlines, just making sure I had those as soon as possible, reaching out to those people that you're close with that you already know that you want to write letters of rec because people have busy schedules. So that was a big part for me in researching. I wanted to make sure that maybe they had a connection with that organization. So maybe I want this person to write the letter of rec for that specific application. And then ACHE played a major role during my fellowship search. I attended a lot of like networking events. I believe it's a great way to meet some of the organizational leadership as well as current and past fellows. So ACHE played a huge role. This is where I'm going to shout out the on August 9th, ACHE is doing a administrative fellowship fair for a lot of the organizations in the Texas Medical Center. So you can find it online and sign up there. I personally, though, I know a lot of people in my cohort use NAVCAS. I didn't apply through any NAVCAS organizations, but there is a fellowship or a webinar on July 9th if you're interested in joining that as well. So.
Brandon, would you like to add anything?
Sure, I can jump onto that. So as far as resources used, I guess I'll go back by starting with, I didn't start off as early as Mark did at all. It wasn't a requirement for my program, so I wasn't even sure if a fellowship is something that I really wanted to pursue. And so the prior year, I was in my summer administrative internship, and that's when I had the opportunity to work directly with the administrative fellow at that hospital on a lot of projects. And so that's when I was really able to see just the high level of exposure that the fellow was getting, how many projects they were working on, how the executives were really just willing to, sit down and have one-on-ones with them and answer any questions they had, debrief from any meetings. And I was like, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. Like, this is something I want to pursue. And so after that, I then began researching different fellowships within Florida, within Texas, certain areas that I knew that I wanted to live in. And then I would take it a step further and then start reaching out to the current administrative fellows at those institutions, as well as former administrative fellows. And so then I was able to get a full experience of everything. Okay, I was able to get the full experience and really understand, different situations that they went through. And a lot of fellows are very transparent. So they didn't only share, the amazing, beautiful things about a fellowship, but also some of the challenges that they were going through. And I really appreciated that because I value transparency. And so that was a really nice thing. Now, moving forward just a little bit to some of the resources that I use, of course, ACHE has the website that had a lot of the fellowships listed, but I was also very involved with the National Association of Health Service Executives. And so within that, I was able to work with a lot of my mentors that I gained through that on just connecting me with different individuals and also using their website and institutions that were listed on there. So I would really say that in addition to, those resources that are online on those websites, to really utilize your network as well. And, just start reaching out to individuals on LinkedIn or whatever platform to really make sure that you're able to get that full experience, not only what may be listed on that website.
All right. So Brandon, on top of reaching out to fellows and using like the plethora of resources that you had at your disposal, was there anything else that you feel like gave you, because we know fellowships are a very competitive process. Is there anything else that you feel like gave you like a competitive advantage?
I would say with that question, using the network that I had, right? I had the opportunity to do a lot of mock interviews with different executives, and I do think that that was very helpful. ACHE and N.A.H.S.E, they were both hosting those events throughout the summer. I know that was about 2 years ago, but I'm assuming that they're still doing that. And so I had those mock interviews with executives who are very familiar with fellowships at their institutions. And so with that being said, they were really preparing me well for the interview portion. And I think that is a big part of it. I also created genuine connections with former fellows who were able to assist me with personal statements, or also, my professors, really making sure that I was utilizing them to, review my personal statements, provide any feedback. When it came to, letters of recommendation, I'll say they really made sure that they weren't only writing things that were on my resume, they were able to speak to a few other things so that these fellowships are able to get the full picture. And so I think that's important as well.
So Deja, in hindsight, is there anything that you may have done differently to prepare for your fellowship?
Yeah, so just kind of speaking to a little bit that Brendan said. So exactly the same thing, reaching out to those current fellows and, getting those one-on-ones set up, being genuine. Honestly, I know this is like you said, a competitive process, and you want to stand out and you want to, say all of the right things, but just being genuine is what's going to get you remembered. I know we just complete honesty. We talk to so many people during this process. A lot of people want to have one-on-ones with us. So just saying, we tend to say the same things, you guys are kind of asking the same questions. So us just repeating that information over and over, but just those genuine conversations where, you're asking real life questions, or you're asking questions that, we haven't really heard before, but just showing us your authentic self, because we can speak to that while we're going through that administrative process better than we can say, oh, I do remember talking to them, but I kind of can't speak much more than that. So really just establishing those genuine connections with those fellows, like Brendan said. In hindsight, what would I have done differently? I think I would have started preparing my materials earlier. I think the hardest thing to get on time is letters of recommendation. So you really want to have who you want to write your letters and just kind of remain in contact with them so that, everything will be turned in on time. I know we just held a webinar session for my organization, and one of the things that I stressed was, unfortunately, I can have a great relationship with you. I can have that one-on-one. We could have talked a million times, but if your packet is incomplete, unfortunately, we have to throw it out, because it wouldn't be fair to push you forward if everybody else, has the complete materials and you don't. So I would say definitely making sure you have all of your materials on time. Like Brendan mentioned, having someone put extra eyes on it, making sure everything looks good. I feel like I could have done that a little bit more. Thankfully, I was able to secure a fellowship, but things could have easily gone wrong, and one mistake and your application could have been thrown out. I know you're asking for recommendation letters from pretty busy people. So just making sure that, one, I would say, tell them that you need it at least like a week or two earlier than you actually need it. But yeah, just having those materials in place, in order, put it in a PDF so it's easier to read, making sure your cover letter is aligning with the goals and missions of that organization, just making sure that it's genuine. Just be genuine. I would say I would try to not be what I think people want to see, but just be my genuine self a little bit more.
Also, Deja, in the beginning of your response, you kind of alluded to kind of the fellowship process in the beginning, of where the fellows are the ones who kind of select the prospective fellows who are going to replace them in the beginning process of the fellowship. So having kind of both perspectives of being like a prospective applicant and being in that seat of looking and like filtering out like this fellow, or this prospective fellow, what do fellowship programs look for in prospective candidates?
Yeah, I think it really just kind of, I guess it goes off of which organization you're applying to, because certain organizations look for certain things because they need certain things out of certain people. But I would say for you as the person that's looking for the fellowship, I would say just think of it as a 50-50 thing. It's not just us looking for someone for our organization. It's you looking for the perfect organization for you as well. You want to make sure that your goals align with their goals, your career plan aligns with their career plans for you. You want to make sure that they're interested in your career goals, So I think I can speak for Memorial Hermann and say that, we're looking for people who are passionate about lifelong learning, like Brendan mentioned, or just passionate about, just getting in and wanting to, do the work so that they can put themselves at an advantage, or just learn the skills that they need to learn, because this is a learning opportunity. And I remember someone telling me because I know mine is a year long. So this is a year-long interview. You're putting yourself out there to say, hey, trust me with the work that, you need done. Can I take this off of your plate? So just looking for people who are ready to jump in, who are ready to learn, but also passionate about healthcare, or whatever your why may be. Just someone that has a why, someone that has passion, not someone who has all the answers. We don't need someone who can answer every single question for us, because if that's the case, you don't really need the fellowship, so just someone who's passionate, someone who has that drive and that motivation for why they want to do something, someone who's passionate about making a change. And I think just overall someone that's genuine, because above all else, they want you to be the correct fit just as much as you want to be the correct for them. So just someone who sees it as a give and take thing, and that it's not just about how the organization benefits, but how, it benefits you as well.
Michelle, I know you're a fellow, or you're a previous fellow at Baylor College of Medicine. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, so I completed my fellowship about 4 weeks ago. I'm now a business development and strategy associate at Baylor. And that's actually one of the things that I looked for when I was looking at fellowships. I went and like a lot of different institutions have like a former fellows page, and Baylor had that. And so I kind of went through their page and saw that a lot of the people who were in fellowships previous years were still here, even up to like 10 years ago, were still here, still employed. And that was something I looked for, because for me, I, moved around, undergrad, moved around for, my master's program. I was kind of like, hey, I'd like to go to a place where I could settle for a while, work, and also make sure it's a good place to work. So that was something that I felt throughout the like interview process about Baylor. Okay, this seems like a place where like, the mission and vision and everything aligns with my own. It's in a place where I think I could see myself staying for a long time. And then throughout the fellowship process, I was kind of like, yes, this is a place I could definitely see myself staying for like, longer term.
So you mentioned, you kind of mentioned like alignment of the fellow with like the mission and vision, kind of can help a fellow stand out within the process. Is there anything else a candidate can do to help them stand out in this fellowship process, Michelle?
As Deja said, I think being genuine helps a lot, as other people have spoken about. When you turn in your material, all those things matter. People remember those things. Even once you're here, they remember those things. I know the fellowship cycle is kind of weird, because at least for us, we hire you like in October-ish, and then we don't see you until July. But you'd be surprised at the things that people remember in July when you actually show up. So all of those things matter. All those steps matter of, okay, what do your materials look like? Okay, how are you presenting the first time in the first interview, the second time in the second interview? And so I would say our fellowship program looks for people who are ready to learn, who are seeing this as a learning opportunity, who are seeing this, as Deja said, as a give and take, as I'm coming here to learn from you guys, but I'm also here to, give my best, to show up, to help wherever I can help, not just here to kind of soak in, but if there's a way I can be of use, is there a way I can be helpful? If there's something wrong, I'm not just gonna look at it and be like, oh, what is everyone else gonna do here? I'm gonna jump in and be like, okay, how can this work? And even if I don't know how to make it work, I'll go and ask and try to collaborate with people. And so I think it's just looking for someone who is, first of all, wants to be here, is eager to be here, is ready to learn, and is also ready to benefit the institution.
All right, so Mark, I know you just went through this process. When you went through this process, how do you feel like you really stood out through it?
I think like Deja and Michelle said, I think the biggest thing was like being genuine throughout those interview processes. I mean, they see so many candidates over and over and over again, and if you can tell, when someone's not being genuine. So being your genuine true self is a really big important aspect to it. Also having a resume that speaks to the person that you are. You don't want it to be solely about like the places that you've worked and what the organizations have done for you, but what have you done for those organizations? State your deliverables, like emphasize the innovative projects, leadership roles, problem solving initiatives that you've been a part of prior to your application process. And then demonstrate your ability to adapt in an ever-changing environment. In healthcare, it's always changing. So we're always looking for people that are forward thinking, so having that and being able to speak to it is really good. And then I know, like Brendan said too, as well, making sure that you have strong letters of recommendations that can speak to your character. So.
All right. So once that application was submitted and you were invited for an interview, can you tell us a little bit how you kind of prepared for that interview? If there's any materials, anyone you reached out to, or just like how you to like really be confident for that first initial interview?
Yes, absolutely. So I know, like Brendan said too, as well, going through the list of the previous fellows can be a great way to kind of at least get an informational interview prior to your actual interview. Researching the current fellows and researching the organization. What are they working on right now? What are their strategies and their goals for the future, 5, 10, 15 years from now? Where do they see themselves? And that information coming in, know the mission, the values, and the vision. those can be a huge part that can set you aside from other candidates throughout the interview process. If you know the organization inside and out, they're going to know that you're a good fit for them, just as you are, and vice versa. So also mock interviews was a great way, can be extremely important. And just really and truly being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I know you hear that it's cliche, but it's very, very true though. Like when it comes to this process, everybody's going through it, and it's nerve-wracking at times, but you got to be comfortable in the situation that you're in, because this is your future, this is your life that you want to pursue, and healthcare should be your number one priority. If this is what you want to do for the rest of your life, put the effort in, and it'll pay off.
I agree. Putting yourself in as many uncomfortable situations can give a lot of ways to learn new things that you may not have known. So, Brandon, would you like to add anything on top of that?
Well, that is 100% my favorite quote. Be comfortable
Yeah,
with
me
being
too.
uncomfortable. I literally said it in a panel yesterday. So if you guys take anything from this, please take that. That is one of my favorite quotes. But just in general, making sure that you're doing your research. I think that it really shows through in your interviews when you've taken the time to really learn about these organizations, when you've taken the time to learn about us, because, in the end, of course, after we ask you all questions, when you all have very thoughtful questions and, maybe different projects we've worked on, or can speak to some of our interests because of, our bios that are on the website, it really does show when you take that extra step to really get to know the organization. And so I really think that just by putting yourself out there, doing the extra research, going the extra mile, it'll really help you in the end. And it will really show that you're genuinely interested in these organizations. And I think that will truly help you stand out amongst other candidates. Also, I will say attention to detail when it comes to submitting like your personal statements, anything like that, because the last thing that you want to do is send a personal statement to one organization and then you have another hospital listed. So just keep that in mind too. Mistakes happen, but really, like Deja mentioned, having those extra set of eyes to really help you review your applications and put everything together, just so that you're presenting your best self when you are presenting these applications to these institutions.
The biggest thing that I picked up from you guys' responses is that one way to stand out is to be really personable with these organizations and the fellows. So switching gears to the fellowship itself, Brandon, could you please speak to this? Can you describe the onboarding process to the organization as a fellow? And can you maybe go through the first 60 days, what lessons you learned, what mistakes you made, anything you can really give us?
Sure. So as the fellowship started, so our first 2 days were really just our orientation. And I really appreciated that because before really coming in full force, we had the opportunity to learn about the culture of Houston Methodist, learn about the history of Houston Methodist. And so you really came in knowing, of course, we do our research beforehand, but really being able to sit through that orientation really allowed us to get a lot of knowledge. We were also able to, hear from our president and CEO, Dr. Boom. And so that was a really intimate moment where we were really able to see how that organization really works as a whole. We hear about the culture a lot, but to get immersed into it from day one was amazing. And the first month was actually meet and greets with different executives throughout the system. And so we spent our first month pretty much traveling throughout Houston. My co-fellows and I got very close. We all carpooled together. And so we're a very tight-knit group. And so we really had that opportunity to travel to the different hospitals, meet with the executives, ask any questions that we had. And that was a really great opportunity. And then following that, we went into our first rotations, which was us going to different community hospitals. So again, that first month, we were able to travel around and meet the executive teams for all of those hospitals. And then following that next month, we were actually able to go into our first rotation where we were able to work directly with those teams that we met.
Mhm. I have a question. So you mentioned the rotations. Like in the beginning, you guys were together, and then when you guys started your rotation, do you guys split up in different parts of within the system, and then it's like really personable towards you kind of like design your own fellowship in a way?
So our fellowship does still have a structure, but we are sent out to different hospitals and we have different rotations. We're never working in the same place at the same time. So it really does give you the opportunity to create your own experience, and you're not really sharing projects with anybody. You do take that full ownership and accountability of the rotation that you're in.
Mhm. All right, Deja, could you add anything to that?
Yeah, so kind of on the other hand of that, ours is a little bit switched at Memorial Hermann. So we did, like he's mentioned, those first 2 days, you do kind of go through that orientation or that onboarding process. And then after that, you do kind of just jump straight in. I'm not going to lie to you. So, but before that, you do have your one-on-one with your preceptor. So us as previous fellows, we make sure to connect with the current, like the fellows coming in, and then we'll go over all of the possibilities that they have or what rotations they can do and just the order that they want to do it. So we do quarterly rotations. And we split that between a corporate rotation, our TMC rotation, a community hospital rotation, and an ambulatory and service line split rotation. So before they even, go into that meeting with our preceptor, they kind of have an idea of where they would like to start. We give them that free rein, like, where do you want to start? Like Brendan mentioned, we have two current fellows right now, and then one fellow that comes in January. So our two fellows that came in this past Monday, they don't start at the same place at the same time. So the thing about that is, so we already have their rotations already in place. So on day one or right after orientation, they're jumping straight into their rotations. So for those first 60 days, it's kind of them going through rotations, but also having that first maybe month. So they'll probably spend that first month meeting and having those one-on-ones with whether it's executive leadership, directors, clinical managers, just getting a lay of the land of wherever they are. And they'll have that opportunity to meet the other leaders within the system once they go to those rotations. And then throughout that fellowship, you will have so many chances to kind of see and be in the same place as leadership. So you will have those one-on-ones or that in-person formal greeting or formal, what's the word I'm looking for? That formal, if anyone knows like that, I'm like blanking, but just that initial meeting. So while we put a lot on the fellows to kind of take initiative to do that, we never leave the fellows high and dry. We kind of set those meetings up for them. We'll introduce them to the different leadership, but at the same time, they're kind of expected to just go into those rotations and just kind of jump straight in.
Is there anything that you feel like fellows can do to prepare for those first 2 months?
Absolutely. So how I said, we have those conversations with them prior to going into or beginning the fellowship. So we're always, so as current, like past fellows, we're kind of with them every step of the way. So we never just give them, okay, we need you to start on recruitment. We need you to do this. We're a team. So the way they see us as fellows within Memorial Hermann, we're like once you're a fellow, you're always a fellow. So we kind of, the transition period is us still doing it, but also teaching them while they're doing it. So while we're setting up those meetings, we're saying, hey, for the next time, this is how you do it. So we're just kind of doing it and then they'll do it. We're doing it, then they'll do it. So we set up the rotation schedule for them. We set up the one-on-ones, and then for the next one, they'll set that up, and then so on and so forth. So they're never alone as a fellow. They'll always, so every rotation that they go to, their main preceptor is the COO of the health system, but while they're at those community hospitals, they'll have an acting preceptor that's the CEO, or they'll have, while they're in ambulatory or service lines, it'll be a senior vice president or like another CEO. So they'll never be alone. They'll never be by themselves, and they'll always have like an acting preceptor or mentor.
So Deja, I know you had just finished your fellowship. Were there any areas within that fellowship that you really felt like you really enjoyed more than other areas?
Absolutely. So I have a public health background. I got my Bachelor of Science in Public Health back in 2019. So I really switched gears going into administration. While it's still healthcare, it's not the healthcare that I was used to while I was within that public health space. I was really more so focused on like community health and social determinants of health and just all of those things, but really not getting to see who makes the decisions and just kind of what that process looks like, which is why I moved over to that administrative space, because I'm like, I want to be in those rooms where those decisions are made, because, yeah, are you doing the right thing by the community? Like, who do you have the community in the room type of situation? So for me, I knew within administration, I wanted to be in a place where I had that sight of it all. So I kind of gravitated towards, so the way we have it, our senior vice president, she's over post-acute, community health, community benefits, and ambulatory. So I gravitated to her area more so than my preceptor, who's the COO of operations. So I'm like, and I kind of felt bad about it at first. I'm like, Erin, I know I'm your fellow, but I'm I'm really enjoying it over here. And she's like, that's completely fine. We really wanted to give you this experience for you to figure it out because we know we know you needed that perspective. You know, we remember you, like Michelle mentioned, they remember a lot about you. So I in those interviews, you know, I'm really passionate about public health. I'm really passionate about community health. They remember that about you. And so my preceptor was just patiently waiting. She was patiently waiting for me to get to that rotation because she knew after my first week, she's like, so what do you think? So she knew, like, people know that there's going to be a place that you like more than others. They know that at the beginning, I'll tell you now, one of my first rotations was marketing. And I'm like, Erin, I love marketing. I think this is going to be the route. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, just kidding. This is not where I want to go. So you're going to have those little realizations where you're like, I love this. And then you're going to come to realize like, okay, maybe that's not for me. And that's okay. You know, I would rather you be in a place and you find placement where you love it versus like, okay, I really made the wrong decision. And that's what a fellowship is. It's giving you that opportunity to kind of see all of the things so that you can make that informed decision at the end and not feel like you made a decision based off of that just because that's where you were in that moment.
Michelle, could we get your perspective on this?
Yeah, so for me, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I kind of knew just from school, just, you know, the classes and everything. I was like, I don't think me and operations, you know, go together like that. That was just kind of my perspective. I was like, you know, I'm not sure. Let me kind of get there. And also coming to Baylor, since it is an academic medical center, they have so many things. So not only do you have like all the things that kind of go under the clinical umbrella, you have things that you can work with research and education. So coming in, our structure is like similar to the one that Brendan was talking about, where we come in, we have like that month of kind of meet and greets, and then it's kind of like, okay, go, where do you want to go? Where do you want to start? Ours is very much, or at least the previous structure that I had, our structure is kind of changing for the new class, but the structure I had was after that first month of meet and greets, kind of choose your own adventure in a way. So they're kind of like, you know, what do you like? We're gonna go work with, you know, the leaders there, get you there. And so I told them, I'm kind of interested in strategy, kind of interested in HR. And then I still had to do like some clinical things, some other things, but I was like, you know, if I could get a majority of this kind of stuff, that'd be cool. And so they worked with me to kind of get those experiences, and I got to have those experiences and also got to see them in a completely different environment, get to see what it's actually like to do those things. Much different from being in a textbook, you know, to actual real life and working with real people, working with a real clinic manager, you know, all those things. People can talk back to you like, oh, we're like, okay, hold on, that's, you know, that wasn't part of my class. But so getting to do that, I got to realize, okay, I really do like strategy. It is something I would like to continue in, and thankfully I got the opportunity to continue in that at Baylor.
So like, since you were a previous fellow at Baylor, can you kind of take us through like the typical Monday through Friday, typical day as a fellow at Baylor College of Medicine?
So typical Monday through Friday at Baylor College of Medicine depends on the week, the month, or anything, to be honest. But Baylor is, because of just the way it is, academic medicine is much different from other kinds of medicine just because they have all kinds of things happening all the time, because you have, you know, you have the medical school, you have the residents, you have the fellows, then that's the educational kind of side. Then because it is, they have the clinic, but all the people are housed in the clinic. So you can have so many things happening at the same time. Then of course you have patients, then you have, you know, budget, or their budget's closing at the end of like this month. So when that's happening, people are trying to close the books, it's a whole different kind of thing. And then also because it's academic, once budget's done and summer's here, the place can be a ghost town. So just kind of really, and that's one thing I like about it, is that it really just depends on the week, the month, the day. But I would say overall for me during my fellowship first coming, it was, you know, that first month of going through rotations. Going through those like one-on-one introductions, meeting the executive leadership, getting to kind of, you know, connect with my co-fellow, with my preceptors. And then after that, starting my rotation. So then when I was doing, you know, just working on HR, reporting to that place, so I went to the clinic itself, and then working there with the administrator, working with the chairs. Yes, and then like whatever projects I'm working on. And once I left, reporting to that place, working on those projects. Baylor's fellowship during my year was very, I guess, fellow heavy. So we met with our preceptors, but a lot of, you know, your deliverables, all those things, and it's still very much kind of a job in the fact that if you have a deliverable, that's kind of on you, you know, and so I'm working on that, meeting with the people I need to meet with, you know, taking the initiative to get on their calendars, tell them, hey, this is what I'm working on, you know, during meetings, if they're asking you what you're working on, you can't be like, oh, I haven't, you know, you have to be like, I've done this, be able to pull it up, be able to speak to it, be able to speak to, you know, how you've been spending your days. And so as it kind of got, you know, less like I haven't been, been here 3 months, 4 months. It's kind of like now more on, they're looking more on me to kind of take the initiative of speaking to the things that I'm doing, kind of taking more initiative, like, okay, I'd like to work on this, where, what's the next step? And I, of course, throughout the whole entire process, working with my preceptor throughout that. But I guess to wrap it up, the days at Baylor can look very different depending on the rotation, depending on how the college is as a whole, but it's definitely something that you can always get the best experience out of it.
Brandon, I saw you nod your head heavily when she said the days can be very different. Could you maybe speak to, as she gave an example, maybe her early days, how your Monday through Friday was after you had introduced everyone or introduced to everyone?
I think that she hit the nail on the head. There is not a typical day of the fellowship. I see a few Houston Methodist interns on here who can probably, vouch for the fact that I'm running through the hallways sometimes, like from meeting to meeting. So it really is a great opportunity to be involved in so much. And so you just really have to understand that, you really wanted to come into this opportunity to be a sponge, right? To learn as much as possible about these healthcare organizations. And so you have the opportunity to sit in these meetings and see how these executives are thinking, see how decisions are made. And so we're honestly just trying to be a day in the life of these executives, right? So their schedules are essentially what our schedules will look like. So they have a day full of meetings. We have a day full of meetings, but you really have a chance to sit there, watch everything that they go through, and then find some time to debrief with them. So also a big piece of advice for anyone in internships right now, make sure you're writing down notes during these meetings. Make sure you're asking questions so you can follow up with these executives. They really do value when you can follow up on a meeting with, hey, what does this mean? And just being transparent, I was very nervous in the beginning to ask questions. It was like drinking from a fire hose, it felt like, just hearing all these different acronyms and things that I wasn't quite familiar with. But we have a lot of executives at Houston Methodist who actually went through our fellowship program. And so that's something that was really important to me while I was searching for a fellowship, because they've been through this, so they understand where I'm coming from. So having the opportunity to sit down in a one-on-one meeting and really ask those questions, and it being just a sigh of relief, like they're like, okay, Brendan, let me explain this. And then I'm able to move forward with my projects and things like that. So it's a really great opportunity. And so, while no day looks like the other, you just continue to learn and grow, and it's a great experience.
Running through the hallways is one way to get your cardio in. But Brandon, you mentioned how you be working on projects. Can you kind of expand a little bit on the typical responsibilities, assignments, and projects that fellows at Houston Methodist may be working on?
So one thing I really like is that you really do have the opportunity to tailor it to an experience that you want. So I don't think that my co-fellows and I have a typical layout of what our projects will look like. Similar to what my co-panelists have said, these executives really take the time to listen to your interests. I expressed that, my summer internship the prior year was working at a hospital focused on mental and behavioral health. And so I've had the opportunity to work on various projects specifically with mental and behavioral health, right? So that's an area of interest that I had. I expressed that, and I'm continuing to work on those opportunities. And I've also been able to express areas that I would like to grow a lot more in. I can be completely transparent with you all and say I did not come in as a finance whiz. That was never going to be my strength. But, I really expressed that to the executives, and I was able to work with like our directors of finance on certain projects to, figure out contribution margins and return on investment, performance, things like that. So these executives really do take the time to invest in you if you're just willing to be vulnerable. Going back to what Mark said, being comfortable with being uncomfortable will take you so far. So I don't think that there's a typical layout for our projects, but you really do have the opportunity to expand on your current skill set with things that you already may have a strength in, but you also have that opportunity to learn a lot of new skills that will help you in your career moving forward.
All right. So Deja, can you also kind of describe some of the projects you have worked on, and then whether you worked on them in a group or just alone?
Yeah, so just like Brendan mentioned, the projects really depend on, well, a lot of my projects really depended on my interests and, what rotation I was currently in. So I know when I first started my fellowship, I kind of spoke to that initial meeting where you meet with your preceptor, or we met with our preceptor and went over our rotation schedule. But also in that, she also let us know like, hey, these are some of the things that we think, you could really help us with. I know you're new, but just getting a fresh set of eyes on it, like as soon as possible, would help us. So from day one, I already knew that I was going to be working on a project with our Senior Vice President of Post-Acute and working on our community health strategy. So one of the things that I had to do, which I kind of speaks to the be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like Mark said, 4 days in, they're like, hey, we need you to reach out to all of our system leaders and get data for every single, whether it's DEI, digital, HR, like we need this data and we need you to track it. So I'm like, I don't even know these people. I don't even know who our leaders are yet. So, just going on workday and looking at org charts and reaching out to your preceptor and saying, hey, how do I get in contact with them? Or going to that org chart and saying, hey, emailing that person, reaching out to their EAs, whatever you need to do to get in contact with that person is what I had to do. And I had to create that data tracker because they weren't thinking about, okay, she doesn't know these people. They were thinking about the end result. How can we track this data within the time frame that they're needing it? Because we were working with a consulting group. The consulting group doesn't know, like, yeah, I've introduced myself as a fellow, but they're not thinking about the fact that, okay, this fellow is new. We might need to cover some slack. She doesn't know everybody. No, they're saying, hey, we want to help you, help us help you. So I had to, reach out to those leaders. And that's something that I had to do first week. And I think that really helped me grow and put myself out there as a fellow to not only introduce myself, but show them that I could get it done within the first week, honestly. Like, they're like, whoa, this fellow just got here and, that she's already being put on projects like this and they're trusting her to, deliver a result. And so that was one of the first projects that I worked on. Like I said, it really depended on my interests. I know going to my community hospitals rotations, they were saying, no one really gave me anything there because you pick your community hospital. So they already know that you have an interest in them. So they really wanted to hear what it is that you wanted to work on, what it is that you wanted to see. So your rotation could go from going from department to department, or you want to shadow administrative leadership. So I know for me, they have a heavy focus on nursing leadership there. So I went to one of the nurses and I said, hey, what is one of the main things that you're working on? What would you like to see improve? So they told me that they had trouble like working on their surge plan. So basically like capacity within outside of the ER. So their current surge plan was heavily focused on the ER, but they wanted to see how it could be unit specific so that there could be like a trigger response plan, basically. So I helped create that trigger response plan. Once again, I had to reach out to every single unit in that hospital and say, hey, how many beds do you have here? What do you do when you're at capacity? Where do you go? Like, so I could track that, I could log that, I could present it to a group, I could speak to it. So it really just depends on what you want to see, what they need help with, what your preceptors think would, could benefit you, how you can grow these skills, and also telling people what you want to see. That way they can point you in the right direction to work on what you need to work on versus them just giving you something that, isn't really going to help you. Either you already know it or it's just kind of not the area that you want to go into. But sometimes people need help and you kind of have to step in there too. So it really just depends.
That was wonderful. Was that hospital that you did that med surge one at Greater Heights?
It was.
You worked with my aunt on that. But she was telling me
Oh,
about
really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Is your aunt Eva?
Yeah, it's my aunt.
I loved Eva. Oh my goodness. I still keep up with her today. I love her.
But Michelle, can you tell us about like your experience at the Baylor College of Medicine?
So for me regarding projects, it was like after, like I said, the first kind of month of meeting people, they kind of like, okay, what are you interested in? What things you want to see? And so the project kind of aligned with, your interests, plus, that kind of department's capacity to, hold you at that time, and then whatever they have available. So I got to work on some projects within the Department of Urology. And so one of the main projects I did, like towards the end of my fellowship, was they were not really they wanted to kind of refine their onboarding process for new clinical staff. And so they were kind of having they felt like they could improve the culture through this, kind of give people a better idea of like, okay, what are your roles and responsibilities? What are you supposed to be doing? What's kind of the job order here? Like, what's the hierarchy here? Kind of get everyone on the same footing. And so for that project kind of came to me because the administrator kind of like, we need something for onboarding. And I was like, cool. So that was just kind of like how it came about. I started working, how can we improve onboarding? What's the current process? Which I found out the current process was not much of a process, which is kind of why they needed something in place. And so kind of working with the clinic manager, kind of working with more seasoned MAs, working with the department administrator, learning from them, okay, what is it that you guys want to see? And then kind of just doing my best to put together those tools, kind of doing a lot of research of, okay, what are the best tools? What are some other things that other institutions are doing? I actually went to the ACHE Congress in March and learned a lot of things from there, what they were doing regarding onboarding, regarding, staff retention, all those things, and then used kind of all the knowledge that I got, all these meetings, getting support from my preceptor, from other people who support the fellowship, and then people within the department to kind of create this tool. And that's something that I was kind of the lead on. And that's like one of those things I was mentioning before of like, when they're like, hey, how's that thing going? They're expecting you to, you can't be like, oh, it's, I couldn't get in contact with this person. And that's not, it's still a job. No one's really trying to hear that. And if you have an issue, you can come and let them know, but it's kind of very much on you of like moving things forward of, oh, okay, I need help, doing this, or I need this kind of information, but definitely something that it's fellow driven. At least a lot of projects at Baylor are fellow driven, and they're expecting you, like, if there's a problem, let them know that there's a problem. They'll definitely help you, but it's not a place where you can just kind of just sit around and hope things work out. Do your best to kind of get it together, and there's always support to help you do those things.
All right, so Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about the pros and cons associated with a fellowship?
I think one of the pros is things that people have mentioned a lot here, that being able to learn, continuing to learn, being able to be in an environment where everyone's understanding that you're learning. If you go straight into a job, if you don't perform, that's something you're gonna put in your little, survey 6 months from now, like, okay, what's up with this? And a fellowship, that's not the case, because everyone's understanding you're a learner. Your preceptor understands you're a learner. When they put you in that environment, everyone in that environment understands that you're a learner. If you say, I don't know how to do this, it's very okay here at Baylor. And just in general, it's very okay, but especially as a fellow that's coming out of school that has never had the opportunity to put these things into use in the real world environment, they're very understanding of that. They're very available for help, for questions. I think another pro of being in the fellowship is that you kind of get access to executives that you might not have access to if you were just straight into a job. I get to speak to people who are head of this, head of that, that if I was just, if I went straight into the current role I'm in now, I might not have any reason to, speak to the president of the college. He doesn't really have any reason to speak to me, but as a fellow, you kind of get those opportunities. And so, yeah, I think those were some of the pros. I think some of the cons, for me is kind of, I believe it was Jada that said, like, you're kind of like in a year-long interview. So that thing is kind of hard, especially at Baylor. The fellows are put in places where you're with like executive leadership. You're like with, the COO, the CEO. And so you definitely need to be on your P's and Q's. And so sometimes that can be kind of like, as they just said, you just got there, had to email like system leaders and all those things. That kind of be like, I just got here, like, so sometimes I think that kind of, even though it's a great skill, but I think sometimes that having to be that adaptable to that degree can sometimes be a little bit tiring, but it's something that, I think that's why it's important to have that mindset when you're coming in of what are you really getting yourself into? Like, that's something you have to be able to understand, that someone can tell you, hey, I need you to go and email this very important person. And you're like, I'm a fellow. They don't know who I am. They don't even know what a fellow is. You're kind of like, okay, but you still have to go and do it. And that's the expectation. And so I think it's kind of like that understanding that, okay, you are in a year-long interview, you are having to meet with these people who are high up in the college. Like we said before, these people will remember you. So if you want to stay where you are and you decide, oh, this day is a day that's not good for you, but you still came to work and did, whatever you did, those people are going to remember that. So when you're applying for jobs and your application comes to their desk, that might be what they remember. And so that's kind of just having that, okay, every day you're on every single day. The work you put in every time should be your best work, just in general, but especially in a fellowship. And so I think that can be kind of one of the cons.
Brendan, through your year at Houston Methodist, are there any pros and cons that you could speak to?
Yeah, I would definitely speak to the fact that, as same as Michelle mentioned, during that year, you really have an opportunity to continue to learn and make those mistakes, right? Like, that's your prime opportunity for that to happen. And everyone is understanding of the fact that you're a fellow. So this is your opportunity to grow and learn. And so while you always want to, be on and do your best, there is that, area of opportunity to continue to grow. And so I really appreciate that. And more of the pros, I would say, were just having the opportunity to really see the organization from such a high level, right? Like, we have the opportunity to be in board meetings, to sit in where all of these decisions are being made, and hearing things about the organization as a whole and seeing how they, affect the front line, and just seeing how the decision trees happen, and so many unique opportunities that you do get to have while in a fellowship. And I don't like to use the word cons, but I'll say a challenge would definitely be just the learning curve coming from school, right? Like you learn so much in the classroom, but it's so different trying to apply it to the real world. And so I think, like I mentioned, just all the acronyms I was hearing and trying to make sure that I was still present while hearing all of these things I've never heard before. And so I think that the learning curve was like my biggest challenge when I first started. But again, being able to ask those questions, putting yourself out there, and really making sure that you're just doing your best to catch up and get up to speed is something that will help you be successful with that.
So there was a common theme, or a really big thing that I really liked, which was a quote, was that Mark said, "Be comfortable being uncomfortable." Deja, on top of that, do you think there's any skills that are essential to be successful as a fellow?
Absolutely. So kind of just going back to what I was saying when you asked, what do they look for in a fellow? So I think for sure, attention to detail. You have to hone in on those skills. That's something as a fellow, I think that you should prioritize, whether it's just delivering something that people have asked for. You never want to deliver something that no one has asked for. They're gonna give it back. They're gonna say, either they're gonna be nice about it. Some people are nice about it, but if I take that to my preceptor, who's the COO of the health system, who literally has 2 minutes to, talk, and then that's it, and she's having to go through things that she didn't ask for, then it's going to become a problem, right? So just having that attention to detail, because that'll prepare you to not only report out to these leaders, because you never know if you're going to be in a position to report out to your director or a CEO. I've been in meetings where leaders at a community hospital have reported out to the CFO, and you have to be ready for that. I think just having that executive presence, because like I said, you never know who you're going to be around. And I think that's something that administrative fellows can practice early. I know at UAB, that's something that they stress to us, like, hey, you're going to have that executive presence, because you're going to be in rooms that you've never been in before with people who have so many different connections within just Houston and just the people that make the decisions. And you're going to be introduced, because people are going to wonder why you're in that room if they haven't already said who you are. So you just kind of have that executive presence. You have to know when to, ask those questions, when to kind of save those for later. Even today, I know I said I wrapped up my fellowship, but I was just at a board meeting today. So just that just lets you know, like, as a fellow, you still have those opportunities. So I think it's a really good experience, but just really, I'm just going to keep it at 2, just because I know we're kind of running low on time, but attention to detail and an executive presence are 2 things that I feel like could benefit an administrative fellow in the long run.
All right, yeah, we are. So that was a good intro. So before we open the floor to QA, would the panelists like to give any final words of wisdom to the audience? If you could name just one thing you think is important for your journey in the fellowship process.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. Once again, I want to stress just being genuine. I know this is a stressful process for a lot of people, and I'm about 3 years removed now, but I still remember going through that fellowship process and just researching the organizations, and it's just trying to make sure that I found the place that was right for me and that felt right. I didn't want to make the wrong decision. Like Brendan mentioned, I knew that Houston was a place for me, so that was helpful for me. But just remaining authentic to yourself. Don't ever compromise anything for anyone. I think, like, it's give and take, like I mentioned before. Don't ever say, yes, I'll accept that just because you think that's your only offer. This is as much as an interview for you as it is for them. So you want to make sure that your goals align. Once again, be genuine and just show them who you are, and never tell them what you think they want to hear, because they're going to give you what, you told them. And so if it's a project that you have completely no interest in, you're not going to deliver the result that they're looking for, because, sorry. My apologies. But yeah, you just want to remain genuine and just deliver what you feel is genuine to yourself and not what you think others need.
I can jump in. I think one of the biggest things is take a breath. This time can be like extremely stressful, as Asia said, for many of you, but just remembering to like focus on your mental health, your physical health, because we've all been through this. It is very, very hard time. You're going through your practicum. You're still writing reports, most likely for school. You have classes coming up. You're trying to get all these letters of rec. You're trying to write your cover letters. like these are really, really stressful time, but just remember to take a breath and focus on the things that will keep you going, because life always has a way of working itself out. So just have faith in that.
I can go ahead and follow up with that. I think that everything that's been said so far is great advice. I would also recommend just really taking the time to reach out to those former fellows. Like if there's any advice I could give, it would really be that, because you get so much information on the websites for these organizations, but really taking the time to talk to us, get to know us is really how you'll get a well-rounded view of what the experience is like, not only for us as individuals, but former fellows who have gone through, seeing what they're doing in the organization, how they progress. And I can personally say that during my fellowship search, of course, I didn't expect to make actual friends, but I made some genuine friends through the connections that I made who were very helpful. So as Mark said, we've all gone through this already. So we fully understand how stressful it is. And so we want to make sure that we're easing that for you. So making sure that you're reaching out to us, talking to us, asking us any questions. I'm sure that just by us being on this panel, that we can all agree that we have no issue helping anyone with any questions. So just feel free to reach out to us or any other fellows at any other organizations, and we'd be happy to help for sure.
Yes, I agree with all that. And I think, as people have said before, doing your research for me, I feel like would be the most important thing. Doing your research and starting early and starting your research early. So just going through, the institutions you're interested in, going through their pages, learning more about the administrative fellowship programs, as Brendan said, reaching out to people who've been through that process, who've already done it, completed it, getting their perspective, speaking to whoever you can speak to, coming to things like this, the ACHE has offered and N.A.H.E has offered, and just learning more, I think is very, very helpful, gives you a better idea of what's coming up and what you can expect. And then, of course, as I said, starting early. People say it when I heard it at webinars, I was like, they don't know me. They should have known. You should start early. You should just start early. It's better. It makes everything less stressful. As Mark said, you're in school, you're doing this, you're doing that, you have reports. Making this something that stresses you plus all that is just, it's not worth it. As someone who did it, it's not worth it. So start early.
All right, so then right now we'll begin the Q&A, and Tawanda Wilson had a question saying, do fellowships require you to have a master's degree, and is this considered your full-time job?
Yes, and yes. I know for my program, we do. So for us, I didn't graduate until this past April. So I finished my didactic portion in April of 2023, but I had to be done with that portion. And then I know I had one more class that pertains to the fellowship. So for Memorial Hermann, as long as that last class is a residency class and not something that you're like a continuous learning class that pertains to healthcare administration, then yes, you can apply for our program. And yes, it is a full-time salaried position for us, at least for my organization.
She also had another question was, within the fellowships, are there opportunities to gain additional certifications or credits / experience towards a certificate?
For Baylor College of Medicine, there is, so ours is the same. You have to have a master's program. Our requirements are a master's program, and that you are, even if you're still in school, you've done with the didactic portion of your program. It is a full-time job, salary, benefits, all that whole thing. And for us, we do have educational opportunities. We sponsor people to go to ACHE if you're interested in that, learning more. If you want to do another, like any educational experience, we sponsor that. We have, for our class, they offered us like project management course, the certified associate in project management that was offered to us as well. And anything else that you're interested in, our preceptors are pretty flexible, very open to anything. So if you see something, hear something like, I'm interested in this, more than likely they will work with you on getting that for you.
And her last question was, are fellowships for those new to the health industry? If not, do you have some years under your belt? How does that look, especially for one that you would love to learn more about the hospital system versus health plan insurance?
So in my perspective, I worked at Encompass Health, a rehab hospital. I was actually in medical billing for 2 years prior to my fellowship. I do think it helped tremendously in terms of just having a bit of knowledge in healthcare, but I don't think it's required though. I think that just being a person like that can get along with an organization and you see a good fit and they see you're a good fit will take you a long way. I don't think that it requires that you have prior healthcare experience, but I would recommend definitely being involved in healthcare organizations if you don't have a job already in healthcare. being involved in things like ACHE it was a big part for me. So.
And Amber
Yeah.
Roberts,
Sorry, I just want to add a quick little tidbit because I know this was a question that we got in our webinar as well. So we did want to stress the fact that this is kind of, I mean, granted, you get great experience, you have access to a lot of different things, but it is kind of sort of like an entry level position. So you may not be used to, just where you're going to be placed once, either post fellowship or while you're in the fellowship, and you might feel like you've seen a lot of different things just given your experience, whatever that may be. So just something to keep in mind is that it would be considered like an entry level position coming into the administrative fellowship.
And Amber Robertson had a question where she did her research and she found that there were some fellowships are project based and while others are rotational based. And she wants to know what are the benefits of a rotational based fellowship opposed to a project based one. And would you recommend one over the other?
So I can start off with that one. I will obviously only speak to my personal experience. I will say that I was really looking for a rotational based fellowship. And the reason why is because, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't know what area I wanted to come into. So I really wanted to have a well-rounded experience where I was able to go to all areas within the hospital system. And so that's what I was really looking for. And of course, as I reached out to former fellows and had conversations, I found out that during all of these rotations, I still have the option to really work on some projects. So that was very enticing to me. And I was like, okay, so it's not only 2 or 3 really big projects that I'm focused on for the entire duration of the fellowship, but I'll have the opportunity to work on projects while going into all these different areas and really figuring out not only what I may like or what I love, but also what I don't like. And I think that's equally important when you're in a fellowship, also identifying things that it's just not a strong suit for you or it's not a match. And so that's something that I was really looking for. And so I don't say that there's a preference of a rotational based over a project based, because I really think it just depends on what you're looking to gain out of a fellowship. And of course, whatever you're looking for, I'd recommend pursuing fellowships that match that.
Yeah, for me at UTMB, we recently restructured the fellowship program, so now it's a mix. So at the very beginning of your fellowship, for the first 6 months, you're doing rotations, and the last 6 months are project based. So once you finish your rotations, you basically have the opportunity to pursue what field you really are interested in. In those last 6 months, you get to dive into projects within that field that you so choose. So I would recommend like finding like Brendan said, something that fits your lifestyle and what you see yourself doing in the future.
And Gilherme Hilgert had a question that said, since most candidates and current admin fellows are MHA, what is the advice you would give to an MBA only student to show we are as committed to the healthcare as prepared as our fellow candidates?
I would argue that a lot of places within our organization actually looks for MBA people more than MHA people, honestly. Not to say that they prefer one over the other, but having that MBA, I've seen it benefit people in more ways than one. So for our organization, we don't just take fellows that have an MHA. I should have mentioned that before. So as long as you are in a graduate program that has like a related discipline, then you are eligible to apply. So majority of the time we do see that MHA MBA combination. So a lot of the people that have either gone through the program or that are in like the COO, CEO roles have that MBA. So I would say remain hopeful because it's going to be put to use. And I think I would go as far as saying you have an advantage. You have that business acumen. You know that language. You kind of know the wording. You have, I don't know, like everyone's not in finance or finance savvy. Speaking for myself, but you also, like, once again, you know that language. You've seen the terms before. You've seen a pro forma. You've looked at budgets. You've kind of seen things in action, or you've reviewed it. You've studied it. So you know what it is that they're looking for, and you know what it is that you need to report on. So I know for myself, just kind of similar to Brendan, I had to work with people within finance, and most of those people, they were the people that had MBAs. So I would go as far as saying you have an advantage having that MBA, to be honest.
All right, and this question is targeted for Michelle. It says, have any of your medical students become fellows? If so, is this fellowship a great opportunity for medical students, residents, and participating physicians?
So our fellowship program is an administrative fellowship program. So I know that there's like the medical fellowships, which Baylor has, but this one is an administrative fellowship. I don't believe we've had any medical students who've become an administrative fellow, but if that's something that medical students interested in, they would have to follow the same requirements, have the same, they have to still meet that same criteria, but I don't think there's anything that would necessarily stop them from joining, applying, or anything like that.
All right. So Kashonda had another question. It says, I thought she said she wants a roll call of the rotations for each facility. We have fellow representation once more. Okay,
So
she had another question. She said, for the project-based fellowships, can one of you expand on the project you've worked on?
Mine was more project-based, so I had the urology project for HR onboarding. I had a project with Baylor has a high school, and so they were trying to do some strategy things. So I had a project with them about doing some strategy for some of the things that they're trying to do for their students. I had to do essentially like program coordination for a research group at Baylor because they're doing a new kind of research initiative. And so I was supporting that group, doing things for them, helping them create different forms, supporting them with their meetings. I'm trying to think back, trying not to mix it with what I'm doing right now. I would say those are the top things I can think of off the top of my head. And then also working with HR for urology. So they had some working with them. They had a lot of things where they were kind of trying to figure out what exactly some of their staff were doing. So kind of just doing a deep dive into a certain like staffing model that they had, trying to figure out, okay, do they need to keep the same amount of stuff they currently have? Did they potentially do the same amount of work with less people, that kind of thing. So gathering that data and showing that to the department administrator. So those are some of the projects that I worked on. I would say mine was more project-based based on others.
And then Gabriella Mata had a question. Is there any didactic training offered aside from core responsibilities as a fellow to further personal/professional development? How is your performance evaluated? And then can you give an example of a project you worked on, how much autonomy you were given for these projects, and how does your program help you develop strong leadership skills?
Okay, I'm gonna take half of that question. So I would say for professional development, I know that Memorial Hermann has a lot of leadership development opportunities, whether it's conferences, whether it's having our health system CEO come and speak. I know just going to different community hospitals, it kind of depends on the character of that hospital. So I know different hospitals kind of prioritize different things, whether I know just kind of speaking to my recent rotation at the Woodlands Hospital, they were really focused. So they're like a high functioning hospital. They do really well. They have really high volume. So they're really focused on just kind of supporting their leaders and just showing them that they appreciate them. So one of the conferences that they have is just kind of honing in on those skills and doing assessments and just kind of pairing them with different leaders within the system that share those same skills. So basically like networking. So it really just depends on where you go for us. But I know at another hospital, we were really focused on, okay, how can we, like we're showing you the metrics, we're giving you like the raw information versus like just coming to you when something's wrong. Like we're keeping you in the loop. We constantly have those meetings with the entire hospital, letting them know what the metrics are, but also giving them the opportunity to say, hey, this is what I feel like we need to work on, and just kind of putting together a professional development event like based on that feedback. So I think it really just depends on what you present, whether that's you going to a leader individually and saying, hey, I'm interested in gaining more experience, or just kind of honing in on my development with this. And I know me as a fellow going into it, that was something that I mentioned in my interview. I was like, hey, I'm really big on professional development. What are those opportunities that you have? And just kind of speaking to what Michelle said, they sponsored me for N.A.H.S.E's conference last year. And also, I didn't get a chance to go, but they also would have sponsored me for ACHE. So whether that's just going and finding best practices or just going within the Houston community, reaching out to different organizations, just kind of giving me that free reign to do that. So I think the possibilities are endless for professional development. You just kind of have to speak up to what it is that you want, or just kind of ask about those opportunities, because you never know where you're rotating could probably have something in the works already.
All right, so we have some hands raised. Jasmine, could you unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hi everyone, my name is Jasmine. I'm currently a dual MBA MHA student here at Texas Women. I just have a couple of questions. I wrote them down. Okay, so you guys spoke a lot about talking to the fellows, the current fellows for the programs and things like that. What would you say would be the best way to approach them? Coming from, somebody that they don't know, what would be the best way to approach them? And then also, I know you guys also spoke a little bit about this, but I also just want a little bit more clarity. How did you find what area within the administration program that you wanted to work in? Like, how did you find the area that you were like, okay, yeah, this is the one for me. Like, this is where I want to be. All right, thank you. Also, thank you guys so much for your advice on all of this.
Thank you for asking your question, Jasmine. For me, at least, I like LinkedIn. So if y'all want to ask questions on LinkedIn, it's actually easier for me, so I don't get it all lost in my other emails. So I like to be able to just like see, okay, I have, X amount of questions I need to answer through LinkedIn. So that's for me. But like I said, I'm on my 4th day of my fellowship. So the second part of your question, I probably couldn't answer just yet. So.
Yes, for me, people have reached out on like Baylor's website for the administrative fellowship. We have like I don't know, just an email about the administrative fellowship, but those go straight to the fellows. And since we don't have our new fellows yet, those go straight to me. So when people ask, can we meet, can we talk? That's best for me. And, that's usually the one I have. LinkedIn is good too. I should probably get on LinkedIn more, to be honest. But that one going straight to my inbox is great for me to just ask, oh, can we meet? I'm interested in the fellowship. I've never had a problem with that. I've never seen anything wrong with that personally. I did the same thing when I was, looking and applying for fellowship programs. So that for me works great. And for learning more about where I wanted to be, that one was just like in the rotations as I was doing my fellowship, asking questions to people who are in a position that, I thought was interesting, work that I thought I would like to do when I got to that, towards the end of my fellowship, and just kind of being really intentional, like, okay, if I were to do this every single day, what does that look like? Okay, where can I go to make sure I know what that looks like? And, talking to my preceptor and working with her to kind of get myself into those spaces.
CJ, could you ask your question?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, cool. Well, first of all, thank you so much for your time. My question is, what do y'all like about the cultures of each of your organizations?
Okay, I can start. So with Houston Methodist, we really have our I care values, which are really important. And what I appreciate about the I care values is that it's not just something that they have written on the website, or it's not just something that might be painted on a mural. Like, it's really ingrained throughout the entire system. And you feel that when you come into the organization, and just seeing how that goes into all the decision making, like how are we going to incorporate integrity, compassion, accountability? Like, they really make sure that all of those values are looked at in every single decision that is made. And to see that not only at the highest level, but also working with frontline staff and seeing how they really make sure that they embed that into every single thing that they do in every department. It really shows that it's not just something that is, posted online, but every employee at Houston Methodist really does embody those values, and they really take it seriously. And so I can definitely say that coming into this organization, it was quite amazing to me to see how it's not only something that's written, but these employees really do live and breathe those values.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and speak next. So I know for me, just kind of going back to my fellowship and just making sure that I was somewhere that not only knew that there would be a fellow, but was accepting of a fellow. And not only did I get in and see that they were accepting of a fellow, they are so invested in everyone's journey. So one thing I can appreciate with my organization is it doesn't matter where you start. They're going to give you the skills necessary to have that translate to anywhere within the organization. I've seen so much movement, and there's no negative feelings towards it. You could be there for 10 years and they still want you to, if that's what you feel is best for you, go do that. Whatever you can do to, advance what it is that you want to advance, whatever is going to help you be your best self. They really care about self-care. I know that's something that I know in school they're like, you're not going to have time to do a lot. But that's something that they really value there, because how can you present your best self if you're not your best self, So we really focus on results, but at the same time, it's like, okay, how are we getting to those results? Are you your best self? What do you need? Are you in the best place? Do you even like what you're doing? So yes, we are a very, popular or just like a very huge system within the Houston community. But we know that we have a responsibility to not only our patients and the people that we serve, but to our employees as well. And I think that's something that I love about that culture, because like Brendan said, you can hear about something that's posted or see about something that's posted all day long, but how are they implementing this at the system level and at the clinical level, at the front lines, So just going through, I know my rotations, I really wanted a chance to meet every single person, whether it's top to bottom. Like I wanted to go from the basement all the way to the 27th floor. And one common theme was that they really enjoy who they work with. They really enjoy the work that they're doing. And they always have an opportunity to do that. You're never stuck in one place. Everyone is always like, okay, you've been here for 5 years. What are we doing next? So they're never going to let you remain stagnant. They're always going to say, okay, what do we need to give you to, enhance your skills for the next level? So whether it's professional development, certifications, putting you in those meetings, having those one-on-ones, you're always going to have a chance to kind of hone in on your interests, tell them what it is that you need, but also focus on being your best self for yourself and for the organization as well. And that's something that I can really appreciate as an administrative fellow looking for somewhere to start my career and just really feel safe and confident in my place within the organization.
Bjorn Bailey had a question. He said, "Hello, fellows. Have any of you heard of an employee of your hospital graduating with their MHA or MBA degree and becoming an administrative fellow?"
Can you kind of expand on that question? I don't know if I'm understanding it correctly.
I think it's someone who's already working within the system, maybe like in an entry level role already, and they want to go for a fellowship. Have you ever heard of them? Like someone from already within the system, like and getting a fellowship within that same system.
Yeah, I
Yes.
can speak for Houston Methodist. That's definitely an opportunity that you have. And so whether it's being a summer intern where you have that internal opportunity, or if you have the opportunity to work, in guest services or volunteer services, no matter what area you're in, as long as you meet the requirements, you do have that opportunity to apply to our fellowship. And if granted the opportunity to interview, and you can ultimately have that opportunity to be a fellow.
Yeah, I've actually also heard of a fellow, worked in patient access at Houston Methodist, and then went for his fellowship, and he actually got a fellowship at Houston Methodist. It was a long time ago, though.
Yeah, my
So,
preceptor at Houston Methodist this past summer was Murad Aralkin, and he was actually working for the system before he ended up. He was working for Houston Methodist Global before he ended up doing his fellowship. So.
is there a good idea to get master's before working in the field, or just going straight with your bachelor's of administration? Or I think it's saying, is it a good idea to get your master's before working in the field, or just going straight with your bachelor's of administration? I think they're asking if you can apply for a fellowship with your bachelor's of administration, or if you should get your master's, or yeah.
I'm going to answer this two ways. So the way that I'm understanding it is, should you go straight to your master's from your bachelor's, like pursuing your master's instead of like taking a break there? That's one way that I'm interpreting. So I'm going to say it's really up to you and your, what position you are in life. If you feel like you want to get some experience beforehand, that's fine too. But if you want to go straight, I've had classmates that I have 22-year-old classmates. I have 20-year-old, 35-year-old. So it really depends on where you are in your life and what works for you. I know I took a few years off, whether it was COVID, I thought I was taking a gap year, I ended up taking 2. So it's just like whatever it is that works for you, that's what works for you. We're never going to say, oh my gosh, they've been out of school for 10 years. Like, we don't think this is for them. Your race, your pace. So on the other hand, this is a graduate administrative program, so you can't just go straight into it with a bachelor's. I'm not too sure if that was also the other side of that question, but you do have to, once again, finish that didactic portion or have already graduated from a graduate program.
Yeah, to speak to that, on our last year's fellowship panel, we actually had a panelist who was much older than, she would always say she was much older than the other fellows. So I guess age and the time whenever you want to go for your MBA, like that gap, I guess is not as important, or not as looked at as heavy as you may think. And then Cassandra Stoops has a question for Mark. Since you have started your fellowship at UTMB, can you please tell us the pros and cons to completing outside of TMC? I'd like to hear what fellowship is like far away from the hustle bustle of the medical center.
Honestly, I'm on island time. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's not like that. I do enjoy it. I do live on the island. It is nice because I was, I did my internship, like I said, at Houston Methodist. And now being at UTMB, it's been a really big change. It is that hustle bustle too, not as crazy all the time. Constant running and gunning. I do enjoy it. I love it. But at the same time, we constantly travel a lot because we have, the League City campus and the Clear Lake campus. So I know that that's in the future for me to still have that travel aspect. I think another aspect of my fellowship is I'm the only fellow. So I know some systems don't have, or they have like 2, 3, sometimes even 4 fellows. So the biggest thing for me is just like, I got to pay my own way, and constantly I'm reaching out to the previous fellows before me to ask them, advice on certain things and me getting into it. But, my 4th day, I've done a lot so far. The biggest thing for me was doing we did the N.A.H.S.E retreat. So our entire hospital system brought in all their executives and presented on everything like finance and quality and safety across the entire health system. So being a part of that was huge. And I think being able to get in and sit in on those meetings was amazing. I was able to ask questions during, like, in front of 25 executives in the hospital and spark discussion between those executives. So I do think there's benefits. I think the cons would probably have to be just like I said, like I don't have anybody that I can just, hey, like, how are things going with you? Because no one else there is going through the same things that I'm doing. But like I said, having the past fellows and maintaining that fellowship alumni at UTMB has been really big because we've had a fellowship for 40 years. And like I said, a lot of the same people that did their fellowships are still with UTMB. So reaching out to them, they're all like in director positions or executive positions. So speaking to them to give me advice on, just starting out has been a really big deal for me. So thank you for your question.
Hey, Kashwana Steffens has a question that says, hello, would you recommend for a second-time applicant that has already, he said, what would you recommend for a second-time applicant that has already graduated?
I would say, since you've already been through this process, just really hone in on what it is that, you liked about the process, what you didn't like about the process, just kind of researching those organizations that, whether it's somewhere you want to apply again or, something that you would do different this time, just really reflecting on that first time and understanding what it is that you're truly looking for out of a fellowship. Once again, attention to detail, just making sure that you have everything within your application packet. Your goals and values align with the organizations that you're applying to. And once again, just being your genuine self. You're going to match with who you're going to match with, and what's for you will always be for you. You may feel like, I really missed this opportunity with one organization. You may find an organization that you completely align with and you love it and you'll stay there for years. So just remain open to the process. I know it's kind of like, wow, this is my second time. But once again, just remain hopeful, remain open to the process, and just kind of be present and embrace what you're going through. And once again, you're going to end up where you're supposed to end up. I didn't think I would be at Memorial Hermann, and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I thought I was going into pediatrics way in Dallas. So just remain open to the process. I literally found this organization on the last day of a last something for me. So And I was open. I was like, you know what, let's give it a shot. And once again, it was one of the best decisions. So just remain open and also just pay attention to detail, making sure that you have everything that you need.
Let me see. What software programs do you find yourself using or most or recommend to become familiar with?
Excel.
Yeah.
Power BI,
Excel.
as we go into Power BI, Smart Sheets, those are some of the few that within my first 4 days, I'm already seeing people present using. So having that experience and learning that prior to getting into a fellowship is massive.
I agree. Anything Microsoft that you can learn and be very good at, that's what I would recommend for Baylor.
And then we had one from Zoom user. If you already have a doctorate doing a master's, does that help with the fellowship application? I guess in a way, does that help you stand out? Would that help this person stand out?
For me, I think it's, oh, go ahead, Deja.
Okay. Once again, I just want to stress that it is an entry-level position. So you might feel like it's a little bit slower than what you're used to. But once again, if you feel like it's for you, it's for you. I know from our organization, we don't typically see people with doctorates apply for our program just because they might be looking for something a little bit different. But if you want to get into that administrative space or, just kind of see things from that holistic view, then yes, I would say go ahead and apply. But once again, it might be a lot different than what you think it is.
See, I was actually suggested by Methodist CEO, Mr. He actually told me to go through administration fellowship coming in August and apply for it. And that's how he became the CEO of North Cyprus Methodist Hospital. And that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, as long as you're okay with the process, I would say go for it 100%. I think it's one of those things where I'm so appreciative of this fellowship process and just my entire experience. I've gained connections with system executives. I've gained mentorship from system executives. Like I know someone mentioned before, like you would have no reason to have a conversation with someone as a regular, not I want to say regular, sorry, that's the wrong word to use, but as someone that's coming in, just applying from just, not going through a fellowship experience. So you have a lot of opportunities to sit in rooms and just kind of hear things and just hear what people are looking for. And then post fellowship, they'll see you randomly and they'll know who you are. They'll loop you in on things because they'll remember things about you. So I say it's an invaluable experience. And if that's something that was recommended to you and you feel like it's something that could really benefit you, I would say definitely go forth and apply.
Thank you.
We're kind of running past time, but just one more question. This was for Brendan from Charity. Can you please speak to the organizational challenges previous fellows shared with you during your research application stage?
Yeah, so of course, this wasn't specific to the organization that I'm at currently. This was just as I was interviewing fellows throughout the country. A lot of them were just sharing difficulties with their approaches to different projects, right? Maybe just getting something thrown at them that they didn't really know how to react to, or challenges with asking questions, challenges with figuring out who to ask for help, because of course these organizations are so huge. And when you get these projects from executives, you don't exactly want to, nag them and ask them for every step of the way. You really want to use that opportunity, like Michelle said, to really take ownership of your projects as a fellow and get those moving along. And so you really have to navigate your way through the system and figure out the best people to ask to help you with certain things. And so those are a few of the challenges that they shared that they went through.
All right. So I guess that's everything. Thank you for everyone that took time out of the day and come to listen more about fellowships within the Houston area. I appreciate your time and the fellows' time for coming and speaking and giving us lots of insight. So yeah, we're done with this fellowship webinar panel. Thank you guys for coming and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all for
Have a
coming.
great night.
And thanks for the
Thank
invitation.
you all.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
That's great.